Okay, I welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is an audio and video show where we interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. On each episode of this show, we interview a guest who has a story to share about how they've acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative way. In the process, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, narrated, and imagined by the guest on our show. Today's guest, Ash, is someone whose work has inspired me. I came across her work through another colleague, and today I'm really proud to say that in the long run, I hope I can create the impact that she has already created with her life. A little bit about Ash before we jump into this conversation. Ash Tooray has 15 years of experience working in youth justice, utilizing trauma-based approaches to assist the healing and betterment of young people. She completed her A-levels in psychology, sociology, and communication studies. She has a bachelor's degree focused in criminology from Middlesex University. She's also a life and well-being coach and runs a business part-time that supports adults that are encountering difficulties with progressing to achieve their best life. She's most proud of the fact that she's the founder of Tooray's Hope, an NGO supporting those in need in India and the UK. So Ash, thank you for making time for this. I really appreciate you doing this in your schedule. But the first question I wanted to start with, we often start our podcast with this question. What was the person like growing up in school? What were some of the things you were interested in, and who were some of your early influences as a student growing up in the UK?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Abhishek. I really appreciate that. That was a big intro, so thank you. So growing up, I think that is, the heart of who we are in terms of when we're growing up, our environment in terms of our family and obviously schooling as well. It's so important. So for me, growing up, I didn't have the best start in terms of, I have a rare skin condition called congenital pigmented nevi. So my schooling was quite tough in terms of bullying, in terms of not feeling a part of, my normal environment, so to speak. And as you know, sometimes children, without knowing, can be quite unkind. So I think that was a start of actually me thinking that I want to be and do something different. I know I was quite young at that time, but I think even now, one of my strongest feelings and ethoses is that I don't want anybody to ever feel that they're fighting a battle alone. But otherwise, in terms of family, I have a brilliant, supportive family. And I don't think, again, I would be who I am if I didn't have the support, one, of my parents who, never made me feel that I was any different despite having this condition, being in and out of hospital, every 2-3 months of my life. Missing school, but I was very academic. I still kind of really wanted to prove that I could be just like anybody else. And my brothers, my sisters, I come from a big Punjabi family. So, I've been very, very fortunate. And I think that always just gave me my experience as a child has definitely formed who I am as an adult, most definitely.
Wonderful. And there's so much I want to unpack there, Ash. I feel like what you said about how our early experiences influence who we are in the long term is so important to understand and process, even as adults. Sometimes there are things that happen to us that we unconsciously or subconsciously process, and then act out when we're adults. But I'm glad that you had that community to support you. And as you were saying, sometimes schools can be safe places. They can also be unsafe places. Your communities can be safe and unsafe. And I think navigating what is safe and unsafe for you is really important as you mature and grow up. But growing up in the UK, as someone that grew up in the Middle East and India, I'm just curious about your perspective as someone growing up in the UK. What were some of the things you noticed, not just in your community, but socially, culturally in that environment? Also growing up as Indian and British. So what was that like for you overall?
Yeah, I think in terms of culture, in terms of understanding who I am, being Sikh has been a really, again, a big part in shaping who I am. So, kind of balancing the British culture as well as my South Asian culture, I think was a blessing because my parents always used to take us to the Gurudwara, and that made me closer to my Sikhi and understanding like seva is the biggest thing that we can ever do, the art of giving. And I always, I suppose, till kind of my 20s, 30s, I always thought that giving sometimes is always monetary, but it took me a long time to understand actually giving of time, giving of kindness, giving of just being a listening ear. That is also a type of seva, that is also a type of giving. But in terms of taboos, I think India is still catching on in terms of some of the taboo subjects. When I say taboo subjects, I mean mental health. I mean, the disparity between, equality when it comes to men and women. We're still fighting a battle. And beauty, beauty standards. Bollywood shows us one thing, but actually the average Joe is not what we see on social media, on Bollywood, Hollywood films. And I think it's very important in the world that we're living at, be it India, be it my British culture, is that actually social media is playing such a big part in people's mental health, people's traumas, that we need to make a change. And I think, again, that is one of the reasons that all the skills that I have here, I love to bring back to India and do workshops. And, whether that's a paid workshop, whether that's through my non-profit or whether that's through my coaching side, I just feel really fortunate that I can at least be a part of that change. But in terms of growing up, I think whether it's India or UK, there are still those subjects in terms of our children that we really need to work on. And I do believe that if any change is going to happen, it starts from our school, it starts from our children.
Yeah, and that point about seva, I've been fortunate to grow up with friends who are Punjabi and Sikh themselves, and I've always thought that's such an inspiring way to look at life. You don't just have to contribute through money, and I remember my friends going to the Gurudwara, on the weekends and helping out with service. And I thought that's such a kind thing to do. And I think it's such an important part of, the Indian culture, but it's an important part of most cultures, this idea of giving back. And I'm curious about, because even on your website, Tooray for Hope, you speak about this concept of seva. So when I say seva, for you, does it do you look at it professionally? Do you look at it in terms of your work with your NGO? So how does the idea of seva, manifest itself in your life?
Sure. Oh my God, that's a big question. I think it features in everything, to be honest, and I think it's the core of who I am. And I think, like you beautifully asked me about my childhood, I think it started then because, again, from my childhood, I knew that I didn't want any child to feel alone like I did growing up. So automatically, I think that seed has been planted. And then in terms of my parents taking me to the Gurdwara growing up, I remember, at the age of like 14, 15, my parents saying like, look, we've given you the foundation. Now it's up to you. And that kind of made me grow closer to going to the temple and understanding about my religion because it was never forced upon me. And that's when I got to know actually Sikhism, Sikhi, and like you said, most human beings and most religions teach us that the art of giving and kindness is the basics, right? It's the foundation of anything. So I think it started from there. And then in 2017, things really changed for me because as a child, my parents, used to take me to India, but we used to go for a wedding, we used to go for shopping. And India was just that for me, going to do some shopping, getting some Indian clothes, getting some cheap stuff, But then in 2017, the poverty hit me in a different way. And I was having a conversation with a friend who told me about a charity called Granthi. And she said, because I said, you know what, I really want to come back and just, even if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks of volunteering, I have to do something. Like something inside me is saying to do this. And I'm a very big believer in the universe, in God, and, you know, what is planned for us. So I started manifesting that. And then I got in touch with Granthi. And believe it or not, they were actually in London, the CEOs, because the girls, so it's they work with children that have been born in the red light district. So the children are actually here doing some art therapy. And it was, believe it or not, it was 5 minutes from where I worked. I agreed to do a workshop to see if we, you know, would fit. A 1 hour workshop turned into 3 hours. I literally, the girls and myself, we just like, it was like amazing. The connection happened. And this was in the July, and in the November, I was back in India doing 4 weeks of volunteering. And then I met lots of different organizations. I went into government schools. I went into a high-risk prison, Dongru prison, did some work there as well. And then slowly things just happened, and hence Touray's Hope was born. So from there, you know, people were just like, why don't you set up your own organization? And touch wood, we've been growing and growing and growing. So my non-profit side is my seva. But also within my profession, as a senior youth justice practitioner, we work to rehabilitate. So I think the seed has always been there professionally, personally, and now in Touray's Hope, because my surname is Tooray, Tooray. But my dad is a genius. He came up with the name. I spent months thinking, what can I call my organization? And just, you know, sitting there casually having a cup of cha. And my dad's like, how about Touray's Hope? And I was like, oh my God, that is fantastic. So Touray's Hope is just what it says, you know, to raise hope in people. And I think kindness, unfortunately, is dying. So just to bring that up again, I guess, and be a part of that change is so important. So I think Seva is professionally in me and personally in me as well.
Wonderful. And I love how you articulated that, Ash. And, you know, we often think that, you know, you're only able to give back when you reach a certain point in your life. But I think your life and your mission shows us that this can be a core part of your identity as a professional. And, you know, you can give back through your work, through, you know, smaller initiatives. And I love how on your website, you know, you archive your journey of service. You know, you started off with a really small amount and then, you know, expanded from there. And very often your contribution was also in terms of your time, you know, working with these organizations, helping them with social media and other services. So I thought the way you support these organizations is so creative and, you know, comes in with this warmth and kindness to help them grow in whatever way possible. So that's wonderful, Ash. But you know, in terms of, I'm looking at this experience you have of studying criminology. You know, and because I'm an educator myself, I'm always curious about the learning experiences that shape you as a professional. So, why did you study psychology and sociology in university? I mean, in high school, because they're not very common disciplines. And then, why criminology and why not some other profession or some other field?
Sure. So, in terms of the human mind, it fascinates me. So I always knew that I want to work with people, and the mind, basically. So in terms of like psychology, that's looking at the human mind and why we do some of the things that we do. And then sociology, again, our environment plays such a big factor in shaping us, whether that's an education setting, whether that's family, whether that's friends. So bringing that all together as well. So that was one of the reasons I did my A levels in those subjects, because human beings, like what makes humans tick. And then once I completed my A levels, I knew I wanted to work with the mind again. So I did psychology. And when I was doing that, there was an opportunity to do criminology. And this was something that I'd never really looked at. But again, human behavior, right? Actually, when people are committing offenses or are involved in the criminal justice system, why is that? What are some of the socioeconomical factors that play a part in that? You know, in terms of drug abuse, in terms of our mental health. So that connection, it just seemed like a perfect match in terms of psychology and criminology. So then once I completed my degree, again, I believe in the universe. Even how I came into my role was, a gift from God. That's how I see it. So I done my, 10 years of studying, and I was just like, you know what, mum, dad, I'm just taking like 4 months to myself. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to chill. And it came to like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I'm like, I'm twiddling my thumbs, and I'm like, okay, I'm bored now. So I applied for some jobs because I knew I didn't have the experience in psychology. So I wanted to kind of just see where I could fit in and get a little bit of experience, so then I can, stepping stones. I've always been somebody that believes one step at a time. I knew that, I've got my education now, but I need a bit of experience. And an opportunity came up actually as an admin post at the Youth Justice Service. So I thought, okay, this is really good. I get to see how the routes work. I get to see, behind the scenes before I decide where I want to go in terms of career. So it happens, went to the interview, and the interview panel had my interview. I thought it went quite well, but at the end, the lady said to me, oh, you know what? Don't be surprised if you don't get this job. I've got something else in mind. So first I was really disheartened. I thought, oh my God, I've probably had a really bad interview, and, she's just being kind. But then when I got the phone call, she was just like, look, I really think you'd be really a good fit for this. And that was a part-time role working with the children that I now work with, but on a low risk level. So it was just like, perfect, that is what I was looking for. And that made up my mind whether I wanted to work with adults who had been involved in the criminal justice system, or children. And so my journey started, and, almost 20 years on, I am now, a senior practitioner and working to rehabilitate high-risk young offenders. So that can be from robbery to sexual offences. It can be murder. It can be manslaughter. It can be very different things. I go into magistrates' courts, also Crown courts, within the prisons, working with the police, children's social care. So it's very, very varied. And that's what I love about my job, that it's never the same thing on a daily basis. So that's how my journey started again. And I do believe things happen for a reason. And here I am.
Wow. It's such a unique and inspiring journey, Ash. And, I feel like in the role that you are in, you have to have a lot of empathy, and, you have to come into conversations in people's lives, not from a space of judgment, but from a space of kindness and curiosity, because we're not often dealt the same cards. And very often, even violence can come from a place of love, of seeking love. And that's hard to understand in all situations. It's hard to see how you can provide support to people that are going through pain and that may have caused pain without, jumping in and saying that you've done something wrong, so you are a bad person. And I think someone once told me that people aren't essentially bad, but sometimes life makes them do bad things, So, in your rehabilitation, like, what are some things that has worked for you to come into these conversations and do your job more effectively? What I'm trying to know is, what does your job look like, and what has worked for you as a professional in your journey as a youth justice or rehabilitator?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing, like you highlighted perfectly, is that actually nobody's born bad. Nobody decides that I'm going to go out and do this criminal act or hurt somebody, whether it's, psychologically or physically. So understanding, I think the harmed has always been harmed. So it's about getting to the root causes of that. And a lot of, well, I would say all of the children that I work with, one, are children, and two, they have a life history, and that is where trauma comes in. And that is one of the things that I really advocate for, and I'm doing a lot of work on at the moment. So my journey, I've lived in Mumbai for 6 months and did a lot of work on trauma-based theories with organizations. So in terms of what our children see nowadays has such a big influence. So what we call adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. So what happens is when our children are experiencing these, be it domestic abuse, be it drug use within the home, be it our gang culture at the moment, because again, drugs are quite readily available. So we have a lot of postcode wars that are happening. And again, deprivation is such a big factor in the way our children are gravitating towards crime. So it's about understanding a whole journey of a person. And that doesn't matter whether it's, a child that has committed an offense, whether that's a friend, or whether that is somebody that you're trying to support professionally, because we all have this journey. And, some people are fortunate to have parents that are positive role models and give love, but actually there's some children that don't have that. And it's about understanding their journey. And until we break that down and understand the traumas, the things that they have may seen growing up without judgment, it's very difficult to make a change, because I've never been in my job and just gone in and seen a child as this child is an offender, because already you've kind of labeled somebody and you're treating somebody a certain way. You need to think of this child as a child, or this human being as a human being. What is it that brought you to this place? And it's about breaking that down. So I think in terms of my coaching and my counseling qualifications and motivational interviewing, that really helps me to break it down. So that point that you said, nobody is born bad, but it's about us being human again and going back to the kindness and sharing that kindness and understanding someone's story. And it's easy for us also to say, oh, you need this and this is going to make you feel better. Actually, no. What is it that you need? And how can we work together to make that better? Sometimes this is a perfect example. I've seen it so many times. If we see a homeless person or a beggar, we automatically think we know what they need, whether it's giving them money or whether we think we'll buy them food. Actually, why don't we ask them, actually, what would you like to eat? What can I give you that will support you right now?
Yeah.
So we automatically just think because it's a charity or because it's somebody less fortunate, we know what they want. But actually, let's go back to humanity. Let's ask them what they want.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like I've been thinking about this a lot at a personal level. And that's what I wanted to ask you as well, because, in your role as a well-being and life coach, you're working with individuals, but then in your role with Tooray's Hope, you are working with organizations and, you're working in an institutional capacity. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, at a personal level, how can we support not just ourselves, but the people we love when they have gone through trauma? What are some things we can do to show them that we love and care for them without jumping in with a solution?
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of trauma, in terms of understanding and listening, I think the first thing that we jump and do is, oh my God, yes, I went through that as well. This happened, and we make it about us. And we're trying to be supportive, and there's nothing wrong with sharing an experience. But when somebody comes to you, maybe they just want to be listened to. So listening and hearing is such an important part of supporting somebody that's healing or somebody that just needs support. Actually, sometimes it's not about us giving a solution, like I just said. It's about listening and saying, okay, what can I do for you? I am here for you. What is it that you need? So firstly, making it about that person, because trauma can, you can go years without knowing that you're suffering trauma. In my life, I did not understand and I did not grasp the fact that I had been through trauma myself. I've been through a journey in terms of self-love, in terms of therapy, in terms of experiencing anxiety and depression. And that's okay. That's my lived journey. And sometimes it's appropriate to share that, and sometimes it's not, because again, it's about that person that's coming to you for help and for guidance and maybe just a listening ear. So understanding the issue, first of all, is important, and then listening, and then together finding a solution. I think there's a 3-step process. And actually knowing that trauma can affect us in so many different ways. You might see a friend that is fine one day, but something has triggered something. It could be PTSD, it could be their anxiety. Maybe you've seen them losing weight, maybe you've seen them putting on weight. It can be so many different things. So even looking for those non-verbal and visual signs that you might see, to just say to your friend or your family member, let's sit down, let's have a chat. How are you doing? How are you? And sometimes we just forget that. How many times, especially, in the South Asian community, we have this: if this person isn't married by now, why? Is there something wrong with them? Or if somebody has a disability, bachara. No. They're not a bachara. They're not somebody that we should pity. Actually, even with disabilities, be it visual, non-visual, let's treat people as human beings first. And as I said, I think the biggest thing we can do is listen and then guide. And then we have coaching, we have therapy, we have doctors. Because again, sometimes friends can't be our therapists or our coaches. And that's one of the reasons I started coaching as well, in terms of life and wellness coaching, because I feel that sometimes we leave it too late. So I wanted to get in there and try and support and help people before they get to the stage of a doctor, a therapist, and medication, because I think there is so much more that we can do.
I love that. Ash. And I feel like just having a supportive professional ear to, hear out what you're going through and support them through that journey. And I love how it's more proactive than reactive, right?
Yes.
You're jumping in and being intentional about understanding that. And this is something that I've been thinking about and been really curious about, is how our identities intersect with each other. This concept of intersectionality. For instance, you can be privileged in one identity, but be struggling in another. And it's really difficult to discern when you meet someone, which part are they struggling with, which part are they trying to come to terms with, because unfortunately society is sometimes structured to prefer certain ways of being or certain identities in a particular way. And this could be class, this could be gender, this could be religion. It comes down to so many different things. And even someone that may seem privileged on the outside can be going through so much internally that we have no clue about, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with Touray's hope, I'm just curious, because some of the problems you deal with, they're so complex, right? There is a policy level, there is an economic side to it, there is the background of the people involved. So do you sometimes find this tension with trying to come to terms with what you can do and the complexity of the problem you are actually dealing with?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always a push and pull factor, whether that's dealing with a child that's committed a murder. So on one side, you're dealing with a child that has all these ACEs, has all this trauma. But then you're also dealing with the family side, where, they've lost a loved one. So it's that push and pull factor. But in terms of what you see sometimes is not what somebody is on the inside, is really such a valid point that you've brought up. Because again, talking from my experience, when I was going through depression and anxiety, nobody knew. And I didn't understand it myself because, like you said, I'm privileged. I do come from a privileged background. I have a great job. I'm earning, I have a roof over my head. I have great friends. I have great family. Why am I feeling like this? I shouldn't be feeling like this. And there's almost a sense of guilt that actually, what is it that is making me feel like this? And then that's when you connect the dots about trauma, about, having that anxiety, about, what is around you, about how actually you can meet some terrible people in life. One of the things that is quite rife at the moment is narcissistic abuse. And I find that within our South Asian community, again, a lot of women, I mean, it does happen to men as well, don't get me wrong. There are female narcissistic personalities as well as male. It's not kind of gender based, but majority of some of my clients that I get are women that have experienced narcissistic abuse. And that comes again from actually really privileged people that are high up and, CEOs of company and very wealthy, but actually they have this very dark side. But also it comes from an environment where, some of the work that I've done with some sex workers in terms of where they're at and what they've experienced. And it is very narcissistic again from males. So what is that? What is that teaching us? And I think, another kind of big drive that I want to do, and, I'm thinking out loud now, is a drive to work with men and our boys, because we're always kind of stereotyping and going to the victim and victimizing the victim again. But actually, what education are we giving our boys, our young boys, about healthy relationships, about what a man should be like? And it's very stereotypical. So breaking that down is so important. And I think struggling with that, I think is something that we need to work on for sure. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's not go by what we see, but actually let's go by the conversations that we're having with people, because you just never know what's going on behind a closed door.
I love that. And with Tooray's Hope, Ash, I love the name, by the way. It just hit me, as you were saying that it's such a fun, clever thing to actually say. And now I see the connection between your name and the organization. But can you tell me about some of the organizations you have worked with and the kind of impact they've had with your support, but on their own as well?
Yes, of course. So I've been fortunate enough to work with Kranti, like I said, in terms of girls and empowering girls. So that was a set of work that I did in terms of mental health, in terms of empowerment, and letting the girls know and the mothers know that there's more to life than just feeling that you're a female and you're stuck in this environment, and how you can grow and how you can actually reach your potential, and having goals and having aims is such an important part of that. So we did a lot around education, and that was a lot of fun in 2017. I've done some work in Lucknow with a school in a slum area, where we were able to, again, do stuff around goals and aims. Beautifully with the donors of Tooray's Hope, we were able to buy them some books. We were able to get a projector for them and lay a flooring down in. So this was an initiative by a family who were just using a space that they had next door to them to educate these children. And it was so beautiful. So they now have a flooring. The children will still come and they still educate them, and the projector's there, and we still reach out. We have some conversations around kind of organization and growth, and then I was lucky enough to work with Shiros in Delhi. So they work with acid attack survivors. So I also do a lot of motivational speaking. That's taken me to Colorado and Canada also, to speak about beauty and how everybody is beautiful in their own way. So empowerment again, and talking about visible and non-visible differences. So I trained their volunteers there. They were like accountants, lawyers. So around mental health, around how, this situation of being a survivor of an acid attack, what impact that can have in terms of mentally and physically for the girls that they were working with. So that's a fantastic organization. They also have a cafe in Lucknow as well, where the women and some males as well are working, because they found it very hard to get jobs in terms of the stigma they were facing in terms of their appearance. So that was, I loved that. Was a fantastic piece of work. And most closely who I'm joined with is Happy Feet Home in Mumbai, and they work with children with life-threatening and limiting illnesses. be it thalassemia AIDS, cancer AIDS. So I've just done a 6-month piece of work with them in terms of consultation, how they can grow, and also coaching, one-to-one coaching for the children and staff. And that's an ongoing piece of work. And, you know, I'm very closely linked with them and will be linked with them because the ethos of how they grow is amazing. And we're also supporting another school up in Ishala. I know you've had Rohit, who's an amazing educator, and his vision is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that piece of work as well. And I think in terms of myself, where my passion and purpose is, they cross. And I just feel like I'm so fortunate to be able to do both, you know, earn a living, also do my non-profit work, and also be able to empower people. So I really am grateful, and I just feel like I'm in such a fortunate position. So watch this space. I'm sure I'll be in India for longer next time. So yeah, the 6 months that I lived out in Mumbai was amazing. Again, took me to Delhi, took me to Punjab. Oh, how can I forget Punjab? So I did some trauma-based work there. I did a workshop for Timeless Amritsar, who again is a great organisation trying to connect with the youth and also get mental health, trauma, you know, and self-love and self-care out there. So yeah, I have some future projects in Punjab as well that I'm really looking forward to.
That's really exciting, Ash. And for the listeners tuning in, I will be linking Ash's websites, and I highly recommend following this conversation up with reaching out to her on those platforms and learning how you can work with her or support her organization in whatever way. But I think the larger idea behind this conversation is to understand how an individual understands that passion and purpose, Ash. And the way you articulated your journey, I see like this connecting thread between what you went through growing up and what you are doing now professionally, and it isn't just milestones, it's not just a university degree or where you grew up or what you studied, but it really comes from a deeper sense of wanting to give back and make the world a better place. So, just someone interacting with you from the outside, I think it's really powerful how you have articulated a vision for your life and how you are working towards it as well. But I'm curious about you as an individual. Can this be difficult for the person giving? I was listening to something by Adam Grant recently where he spoke about givers and takers, and you seem like a person that naturally gives. So how do you take care of yourself? What are some things that you do on a day-to-day basis to show yourself that love and that care that you want to give others?
Yeah, of course. I mean, self-love is so important. And again, my journey, it's been very up and down, but I'm a big believer in meditation. And like I said, the universe, what we put out is what we get back. And that was my journey. That was my self-love discovery journey, because I didn't love myself for a very long time. This is a whole different topic, but for a long time, I didn't have that self-love. I didn't have that self-confidence. I felt different. I felt like I wasn't normal, so to speak, but actually everybody is normal. And what is normal? Just because you have a difference, you can either choose to use that difference to seclude yourself and isolate yourself, or you use that difference to embrace yourself and be able to be maybe that rock or that ear for somebody else. And I decided, I think at a very young age, that I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to be that person that was just going to be, oh, my life is going to be like this and it's going to be over because I had this rare skin condition. It doesn't mean anything. Beauty is only skin deep. So when I discovered my meditation journey, so I'm a big believer. You can see peacock in the back. I have a peacock tattoo. So when I went to my first seminar, we did a meditation on connecting with your spiritual animal. And I've always loved peacocks, but never really, again, known the connection. When I did that meditation, a peacock came to me. So that was a realization for me that is my spiritual animal. And believe it or not, after that meditation. I see a peacock in one form or another every single day of my life, whether that's on TV, whether that's when I'm shopping, whether that, wherever. So it has a big significance for me. So I think being able to connect with something and connect with yourself, that, you know what, maybe I'm not where I want to be at the moment, but at present, I'm the best version of myself, and I'm going to strive to be even better. And that's okay. So I think in terms of grounding myself, I have a great family network and friends that I can kind of speak to and offload on. And also spiritually, I'm very spiritual. I pray, I meditate, and talk. I share, and I think that's so important, because again, realizing later on in life as an adult that I had a lot of trauma to deal with, and still at time to time, everything is not perfect. Being a positive person is not being happy all the time. It's okay to shed a tear. It's okay to say I'm not okay. And I think people forget that sometimes. So I think in balance, if you have everything, that can really help you on your journey. And again, for me, therapy helped me a lot. Because one thing I knew, it's not for everybody. Again, some people do need the support of medication, and doctors and therapists. But I chose the therapist route. I didn't want to go into medication, because at one time my doctor did say, let's get you onto medication. And I was just like, no, I want to kind of try and fight this battle with therapy first. And then if things don't work, then we can look at other alternatives, because like I said, everybody's journey is not the same. Some people do need medical intervention, and that's absolutely fine too. But through my therapy journey, I was able to heal. I was able to understand trauma better. And I think also understand myself. Before I was a very yes, 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 yes person. And now actually I do say no. If it's not good for my mental health, if it's not good for my aura, if it's not good for my energy, it's okay to say no. And I think that's one piece of advice that I would give everybody. It's okay to say no, because sometimes we feel guilt when we say, actually, I can't do this today. But actually, you need to put yourself first. And I think self-care is so important. I go for walks. I love the fresh air. I read. But I think meditation and my spirituality is the two main things that get me through the dark days.
I love that. And just to respect time, I
Yes.
wanted to ask you the final few questions is, in terms of a recommendation for a book, a film, a podcast, or anything that's helped you,
Yes.
at a personal level, and maybe not even through a dark time, but even through a happier time in your life. So anything that comes to the top of your head that you
Oh,
want
yes.
us, yeah.
Straight away, Louise Hay. When I read her book and saw her short documentary, it's on YouTube as well. You can view that for free. You can heal yourself. It was a game changer for me. It really was a game changer. Thinking about the connection between our body, our mind, and our environment, and how actually the power of words. We're so critical sometimes when we look in the mirror or we're having a conversation, in terms of thinking about, oh, I could do this better, or I don't like my hair today. I don't like what I'm wearing. I look fat in this. We can put so many negative connotations on ourselves, that's what we're putting out, and that's what we're feeding ourselves. Would you talk to your friend like that? Would you be so unkind to your friend? Because I think sometimes we're our worst critic. So I think once we change our language and say, okay, I don't really like this about myself today, so this is what I'm going to do to change it. Or, you know what? Yes, I need to lose a few pounds, but I want to get healthier. Rather than just putting all this pressure on ourselves, which is negative. And then we feel it through our body, stress levels. Stress is connected to our gut. So our gut can, give us a lot of problems in terms of when we're not dealing with things properly. So understanding that connection, Louise Hayes' theories, her book, she healed herself from cancer. And, you know, it just changed my life. And that is one recommendation that I would make to everybody. And also The Secret. It's small pockets of inspiration, small pockets of theories and positive affirmations by many different world leaders and inspirational people. I think those two are probably my go-tos. And again, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, my spiritual book, Bible, which I go by, daily. And that just teaches me to try and be the best human that I can. And I think that regardless of religion, regardless of what your beliefs are, if we can try and be good humans, we can make change. Because I often get, oh, you're one person, like, are you sure you want to do this? Or why are you doing this for free? Why are you not charging? But you know what? That's my choice and that's my journey. And I believe, like I said, kindness, be it monetary, be it the donation of clothes, food, time, your expert skills, it's all valid and it all can make such a big impact on people's life. And I still to this day get texts or, get messages from people that are doing so well. And that is my reward. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful legacy to leave behind, in terms of the impact you've had. So for the listeners tuning in, thank you again. This was a wonderful episode. And Ash, for anyone that wants to reach out to you, what are some recommendations or ways we can work with you or learn more about your work on the
Sure.
internet?
Yeah. So kindly, you said you'd put the website. So that's tourayshope.org. And my coaching website is ashtoorayshope.com. I'm most active on Instagram. Social media does have its pros. You can DM me. I offer free for 30 minutes consultation if anybody's struggling. But again, I do have a non-profit side as well. So if anybody is struggling, we can make it work in terms of non-profit as well. But yeah, just email. I'm on most social media platforms. Just reach out.
It's awesome. And on that note, we come to an end of this episode of Learning Stories. Until next time, keep learning.